Hi everyone, I'm going to go through the magic circle with you. It can be tricky to get the hang of, but do persevere because it's a really important part of what we do. It gives us nice closed starts to our loops. Let me just get some more light on there because that's turned off. So I start with the longer tail so I can sew in any closed gaps and close up any gaps that may form while you're doing your project. It does get pulled about a bit in the first few rows, so you know, they do happen. Don't feel like it's anything to do with your technique, but just as something to have if you need it. So have a longer tail so you can sew in and weave in your ends. So the magic circle starts by getting 2 fingers, hold the yarn with your thumb, and we're going to go round once, round twice, but the second time you're going to form a cross. We're going to take our finger and clamp. Okay, do that one more time. Use your thumb to hold, over once, over twice, create a cross. Use your finger to hold. We're then going to get our crochet hook and go under right, over left. If you are left-handed, you can flip the video. Hope that works. And then pull the yarn through, and then you're going to do what we call a 12 to 6 position. Going to get your hook and you're going to go 12. Make sure your tip of your hook goes over everything to 6. You're then going to get your hook under your working yarn, which is the left hand side, and pull it through that loop. Now, if your yarn splits like it has with me, don't panic, just let your hook come out and put it back into the gap where all the strands are. Do that again. So we hold thumb, yarn once, yarn twice, hold with your finger, under the right, over the left, pull through, get your hook in a 12, make sure it goes over the top to 6, take your working yarn, which is your left hand strand, and pull through your loop, and you'll have a nice little starting loop like that. Get your fingers out and you'll have your working yarn at the right, tail at the left, and your loop in the middle. And it is a self kind of closing loop, so you can pull it tight and open it again, so don't panic if it ends up too small or too big. You can close it up. So moving on, you want to position your working yarn around behind you as if you're going to start crocheting, and then your tail is again to the left. There'll be 2 strands together that are forming the crossover of the loop, and you want to kind of form a triangle with your fingers, with your thumb and your finger. And this is the space you're going to go into here. That first loop you can tighten up a little bit. You can tighten the knot up, but the loop itself, you can have a practice with your tension. But that first loop, don't make it too tight. If you haven't got a bit of a gap there, your first stitch is going to be an absolute pain to get your hook into. So you want to create a little bit of a gap. Not huge, but just a little bit of a gap. You're then going to work 6 stitches into that space. So we're going 1, using the yarn under technique, 2, yarn under, yarn under. Now I do move my hands a lot when I crochet, unfortunately, but I'll try and keep them still for you. So that's 2 done, got the 3rd one, 4th, 5th, and 6th. And there we go. So they will twist a little bit, but as you can see, we've got 6 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Your 6th stitch will be this one here before your knot. So this is your knot, and this is your first stitch, your first V. See the V's? So you'll work into, this will be your front loop and this will be your back loop once you've got it circled up. So if you hadn't have left that gap, that first stitch would have been very tight to get into. So personally, I generally close my loop and then start, but if you're a beginner, it may be easier for you to start crocheting into that first stitch without closing your loop. So just maneuver it round and circle it round so you can see your first stitch. So we're going to go into the front loop only. Now this will be your invisible increases. So just to show you where the loops are, they're your front, your first stitch, both loops of your first stitch. Now for the invisible increase, you only go into the front of the first stitch, and then you go through both loops for your second stitch, for your increase stitch. So we'll just get everything else out of the way. Into your first front loop, yarn under, yarn under, that's one stitch. Into the same stitch, we're going to go into the front loop and the back loop. So we've picked up both loops there. Hope you can see that. And then yarn under, yarn under. So that's your first increase. You've got 2 stitches in the same first stitch. Onto your second stitch, which is here, front loop, back loop, into the front loop only, yarn under, yarn under, then through both loops. So pick up both loops, yarn under, yarn under. Again, third stitch, front loop only, and back stitch through both loops, and then next one, front loop only, and both loops. I think we've got one more, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. And then both loops, and we should have 12, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11, one more to go. Front loop only, then both loops. That last one will look a bit bigger. And there you have 12. Now the pattern will generally tell you when to close your loop. Sometimes it's after the second, third or fourth row. You can close it up at this point, just to give you a demonstration. Now personally, I don't know if it matters, but see how this kind of twists round once on the white strand. I tend to just untuck that, because in my head that twist is going to cause a gap. It probably doesn't, it's just in my head. So I just tend to unloop that. So I've just got them separate, and you just gently pull. With cotton yarn there's a bit of resistance, so you do have to be a bit firm. So hold your project with thumb and finger just on the edge there, and just gently pull a little at a time until it doesn't pull anymore, and that creates a really nice tight closure to your work. Now you can probably see I've got a little gap there just here, you can see, and that is why you leave a tail to close up any gaps. So you can just go back and forth through that on the back side. The back side is always where your tail is, so that will be the inside of your work. Hope that helps. If you need anything more, let me know.